Hello everybody, welcome to another vlog and welcome to a rare sighting of me, Florence. As Sarah said in her last video, with parenting being what it is, it has been a lot harder for me to get on here and do long form content, although I do still film short form things over on my Instagram. But I am happy to be back and I'm happy to be here with a reading vlog today. And this is unusual for me, but I am reading a new release. So for our reading vlog this week, we are going to read Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I was very quick on putting this on hold at the library, and it actually came in at around the time that everybody else is reading it, which, like I said, is very unusual for me. This is my second Taylor Jenkins Reid that I am going through. The first one that I read was Malibu Rising, which I really enjoyed. Although I found it frustrating, but I think it was meant to be frustrating. What I was frustrated with was that the characters kind of fell into these generational patterns, and you could see the generational patterns, and you really wanted someone to be able to break them, but everyone just kept kind of falling into the same thing over and over again. So I think that's actually an endorsement of Taylor Jenkins Reid's writing and not a critique. So I am excited to get into this week in a timely manner and get this video out maybe while people are still reading it. I've actually only read the first chapter so far, but I found myself getting a little emotional right away, right at the first chapter, so I think that is a sign that it is going to be good. Now, I do want to let you all know that some of the footage of me reading might look a little bit samey, and that's because, once again, being a parent, I don't have a lot of time to read, and the time that I do have is at very specific times of the day. So you're going to see a lot of me in my pajamas right before I go to bed reading in bed, because that is mostly the time that I have to read nowadays. I read lots during the day, but of course I'm reading kids' books to my son, so it's a little bit of a different vibe. But even if the footage looks a little bit same old, because I'll be wearing pretty much the same outfit every time, I think it'll still be good to capture some of that, and I will come on as often as I can and give you updates on how I am feeling about the book. So without any further ado, let's get started with Atmosphere. Okay, so I am about 60 or 70 pages through Atmosphere, and I am really loving it so far, just the way I expected I would. A lot of those first pages are just kind of laying the groundwork. The first couple chapters really set the scene for what you know is going to happen in some form when you get to the end of the book. And so I found myself emotional right from the very beginning of the book, just because it's structured around this terrible thing that happens. And so she really hits you for an emotional gut punch kind of right from the very beginning. But then, as she finishes up with that narrative, she really takes you back to earlier and how everything started, and I have been finding it really interesting to kind of see how the characters' stories are weaving together. One thing that's interesting about this book that I don't know if I like it or not is that we really only have a very superficial understanding of all of the characters so far, and I don't know that we're going to be able to get that much depth of understanding by the end of the book, because it's not a very long book, and I'm already 60 or 70 pages through it. And so if we haven't kind of built some of this now, I don't know how much more time we're going to have to do this, and also cover everything that they're doing as like training to be astronauts and things like that. So I'm just kind of interested to see how much detail Taylor Jenkins Reid decides to share about the characters and how much she decides to withhold, and how I feel about that style. But so far I'm loving it just the way I expected I would. So I will get back to you as we get more into the book. Okay, we are down to the last 100 pages of Atmosphere, and definitely it is so good. I will say that, like, I still don't feel like we're going super deep on a lot of things, and I don't feel, I guess, I feel very connected to, like, certain small parts of this, but not as, like, insanely connected as I was expecting to feel. But I do appreciate that while Taylor Jenkins Reid doesn't go deep on a lot of things. Where she goes deep, she goes really deep. So the parts of that she is doing, I really, really enjoy. I enjoy kind of navigating some of these relationship dynamics, although there are some things she describes about relationships that I think she means to be super relatable, but are not relatable to any relationship I've ever had, so I don't quite understand where she's coming from on that, but I'm really enjoying the book so far. I am headed to the National Book Festival in Washington, D.C. today, and so I will have a nice long metro ride where I am hoping that I'll actually finish this, and then I'll have some more thoughts for you to share after that. Hello everybody, so it is now belatedly time for my Atmosphere wrap-up. I actually finished the book a couple weeks ago, but as is the life of a mom to a 10-month-old, I really had to carve out some time when I had a little bit of time to myself in a quiet space to actually talk about what I thought of the book. So in general, the first thing I want to say is that I really loved Atmosphere. I thought it was a great book. It's only the second Taylor Jenkins Reid book, I think, that I've ever read, but I liked it even more than Malibu Rising, which is the other book that I can remember that I've read. And I thought that it was really well written and fun to read. It was interesting kind of tonally for me because thematically it had a lot of kind of heavy discussion and it felt like a little bit more of an in-depth read, but it also was a very fast-paced book. And so I got through it really quickly, so it kind of felt like a light read and a heavy read at the same time. But on the whole, despite kind of the deeper subject matter that was inherent in the book, it was still generally felt like more of a lighter read. And so I liked having a lighter read in the midst of a bunch of heavier reads that I have going on. And I really enjoyed the general theme of this kind of group of astronauts. I still didn't feel like we did get really, really deep in depth for some of the stuff that the characters went through, but also really kept a lot of things surface level. And there was always this moment where I expected to get more in depth on some of those things, but I knew based on the length of the book that we weren't going to be able to do that, especially going back and forth between these two time periods and these different phases of people's lives. So it was kind of a really fun book where we got in depth with some really great things, but also kind of like kept me wanting more in that way because there was so much about the lives of a lot of the people in this cohort that we just didn't cover. One thing that I mentioned before that I would kind of reiterate now that I finished the book is that Taylor Jenkins Reid is just really talented at writing frustrating relationships, especially frustrating family relationships. I mentioned this when I talked about what I thought of Malibu Rising when I read it, which is that the biggest takeaway that I had from Malibu Rising, as well as it just being a well-written book, was that it was so frustrating to see these generational patterns in this family play out over and over, and you were always wondering if like the next iteration is going to be the one that breaks the pattern, and then you just kind of see them falling into these same habits over and over and over again. I remember being so aggravated by that in a good way, in a way that was well written and that I think that she intended to do, but still extremely frustrating. And I felt the same way about Joan's relationship with her sister Barbara in Atmosphere, where it was the same type of thing. I just ended up being so frustrated at Joan and Barbara's relationship, and it felt like she did the same thing that she's done before, which is write these difficult family relationships in a way that really makes you feel something. And so I didn't know going into Atmosphere if this was like something that Taylor Jenkins Reid does a lot, and I don't know if she like on purpose does this, where all the books that I've read of her, she portrays these really complicated family relationships, but we're at 2 in a row now that that's happened, so I wonder if it is something that she's just kind of uniquely skilled at. And so I was kind of interested to see that type of thing happen again. One thing that I did when I was reading Atmosphere that I don't usually do, and I can't remember if I've said this in a previous clip, so just bear with me if this is repetitive because I filmed all of these things so very far apart, but I ended up skipping to the end of the book to follow a little bit more along with the story. I have trouble with stories that have time jumps, because once I'm in a storyline, I like to kind of follow it through. So I ended up being in that, like, their present day storyline in this kind of disaster that happens, and we got to one point where I really wanted to, like, follow along with what was going on in that particular storyline instead of jumping back into the past. And so I went to the next part where we're in that storyline, but it was the end of the book. So I ended up about halfway through the book reading the end, but it didn't really spoil any, I mean, it spoiled anything in the sense that, like, I knew what happened, but it didn't spoil the, like, reading experience for me, because I cried when I read that, the end, the first time, and it didn't stop me from crying again when I read the end of the book the second time. So it's hard in that way, because sometimes these books that have time jumps are a little bit difficult for me, because I like to get so invested in where we are at that moment that it's hard to go back and forth. But in this sense, kind of spoiling myself for the end of the book didn't really make that much of a difference. It was just as emotionally compelling each time that I experienced it. And so I really, really enjoyed Atmosphere. I am hoping to read a little bit more of Taylor Jenkins Reid's work. I haven't done any more yet. I don't know what my next read would be, but I was glad that I was able to read this at around the time that it came out. So next on the docket, we have some very ambitious fall season reads ahead of us. I would love to do, if I can, I would love to do another unhaul challenge, because once again, as we do every year, we have our yard sale coming up. And when we do our yard sale, I like to try to unhaul as many books as possible. So that would be great if I could do that again this year. If any video that I do gets dropped, it'll be that one, unfortunately, because we are running out of time for that. But I'm going to try to do it because I do really enjoy reading books that I'm going to unhaul. I know some of you have had a very visceral reaction to me reading books I know I'm going to hate, which is somehow not a waste of time for me. Even though I know I'm not going to like the book, it's fun just to, like, experience why I don't like it. And so I am enjoying kind of reading these books that I plan to unhaul. And I do have a lot of books that I want to give to the yard sale this year, so I hope that I will be able to get to that. But I will not spoil for you which book it is. But the main reason that that might get dropped is our next new release reading video is my #1 anticipated book of the year. And so I am reading that right now. I am getting the footage for that right now. And that's non-negotiable, because my goal is to read this particular book, whatever it may be, as soon as possible. And so that is my main reading priority right now. So stay tuned. This year I am unprecedentedly reading 2 new releases within the first few months that they're released, and getting ahead of the game, as it were. So I hope that you will enjoy seeing that video when it comes out. I know I'm keeping it kind of a hush-hush type of thing, but I'm sure that you might be able to guess what book it is based on books that I've enjoyed in the past. And then hopefully we'll also have an unhaul challenge video for you. We will see what we can do. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed Atmosphere. Whatever you thought of Atmosphere, I'd love it if you would leave it in the comments below so that other people can enjoy your thoughts. And we have lots of great content coming up in the month of October. So I hope that we will see you back here soon, and I'll talk to you then. Bye!